Hello and welcome everybody. Today we are going to be talking about assessment in the early years. This is part of a series that we've been talking about looking at PYP implementation, particularly pertaining to the early years. So in this session we're going to be hearing from schools all over the world, and we're going to be starting with a school in Beijing. So I'm going to hand over to Kate to do her introductions.
Hi everyone, my name is Kate Mancarella, and I am the PYP Coordinator and Deputy Principal at Beijing City's International School at the Early Childhood Centre. To give you a bit of background, we're in our fourth year now of being in a purpose-built early childhood facility in downtown Beijing with over 300 2 to 5-year-olds in our facility. Prior to our move to this facility, we were on our main campus where our school hosted all grade levels from nursery to grade 12. And we thought today it might be interesting to share our story about the changes that we have gone through as an early childhood department in terms of how we analyse and document learning over time. I'd like to acknowledge all our teachers and the core group of people, Alan, Helen, Alicia, Hannah, Callie and Dan, who worked on putting this presentation together as well. Our reporting system has naturally evolved over time as our school has matured. But a few years ago, we started to question the way we were reporting in the early years. We had a whole school reporting tool for our preschool to grade 5, and we felt that this reporting system was overriding the actual purpose of assessment. We felt that it was not the right tool for the early years, and reporting to parents was overshadowing what reports were actually for. We began to realise that one size didn't fit all, and the physical move to an early childhood division allowed us to revisit the purpose. We asked ourselves, did our assessing and reporting represent a deficit model or a strengths-based model? Did our assessing and reporting involve student and parent voice? Although it did in some aspects, the overarching answer was no, our assessing and reporting did not. We felt that we were more focused on assessment of learning rather than assessment for learning and as learning. In the recent Learning and Teaching in the Enhanced PYP Part 2, it has a strong focus on the different enhancements to strengthen assessment. And in this document, it highlighted two really important questions that we've been discussing as a school. How do we as a school understand where a child is at any given time and over time in their learning? And how do we know as a school how to use this information to promote and support further learning? To help us unpack these two questions further, we devoted time over the last few years to professional development around unpacking the differences between observations versus interpretations. We felt that we needed to upskill ourselves on how to really analyse children's play so we could move beyond looking for outcomes and move towards understanding what patterns in play, in the children's play meant, and what the learning process the children were going through and why. From this PD, we came to a common agreement as a staff that the way the teachers took observations was going to be a personal approach. So the way they could choose to take photos, anecdotal notes, checklists, videos, etc. However, what we did find was that there was a need for a systematized approach amongst our teachers for writing interpretations about children's play for collaborative purposes. We started to document our interpretations using a collaborative tool called OneNote, and we developed then guiding questions to scaffold us through writing our analysis. As we started to develop systems and work on writing interpretive statements of children's learning rather than just recounts, we started to ask ourselves, why couldn't these interpretations not only inform teaching and learning, but also report to parents where their child is at any given time and over time in their learning? However, we had some challenges along the way. We found that the software we were using, it really had limitations. We couldn't filter our interpretations and we couldn't share our OneNote with parents, and we started to realise it didn't have the communication function that we would have liked to have seen. So our elementary school started exploring different platforms to use for an e-portfolio. We then followed in their steps as we were both looking for a child-friendly portfolio coupled with a mobile parent communication platform. We then moved into using Seesaw, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. As we started exploring this tool, we discovered that there were 3 different types of posts that our teachers were writing. The first was a recount or an interest type post that was either based on an individual, small group or whole class. The second type of post was an interpretation of a single event. And then the third type of post was an interpretation of children's learning over time, which we called a Focus Child newsletter. As a school, we realised we needed a systematic way of tagging essential elements of the program, attributes of the learner profile, and elements of our school's mission in order to see learner growth over time. At first, you can see we had no systematic tagging of a post. Then next, we began tagging as part of the narrative comment. And then after that, we created a standardized set of tags that children, parents, and teachers can see and filter. As soon as we started using Seesaw, the posts to parents increased dramatically, but we started to notice that we were really focusing on the teachers communicating to parents and that we couldn't really see or hear student voice as much as a school would have liked to have seen, and we recognised that we needed to emphasise assessment for learning and as learning. Our thinking around the need to have a stronger focus on student voice was also recently acknowledged in the new Learner in Your Hands PYP, where it was recognised that student voice, choice and ownership was evident as students' agency. We felt in particular that we needed to showcase how our children were learning over time and how they were collaborating and co-constructing their learning and their learning goals. And we found that if we documented this better, then we could genuinely say that this would reflect an aspect of supporting learner agency. Also in the recent Learning and Teaching Update Part 2, with the concept of reflection being removed as a key concept, we feel that there's even more responsibility that schools do have systems in place to ensure reflection on behalf of teachers, learners and parents, and that these reflections occur regularly and are embedded in the teaching and learning process. So going back to looking at the different ways to document learning over time, we have discussed that we identified 3 different types of posts that we recognise could actually be teacher-initiated or child-initiated. We then thought, though, what about the parents? Where is the parents' voice in this whole process? We found that as we started to post more, we found that without any prompting, parents were starting to comment. However, we feel like our next steps here are to try and foster the development of parent voice in our documenting over time, as we feel like this would help us build better homeschool relationships, and we also feel like it would help the parents understand the school, our program, and their own child much better. We would love eventually for our parents to be making posts themselves, either with their child or with them, or with their child or about their child. This process has started organically, but we know we need to support and educate our parents about the types of posts that would be meaningful to make. We know that for us to be successful in making meaningful documentation about children's learning, that we need to provide time for our teachers to do this. So we've created a meeting schedule which allows our teachers in 1 week to discuss their interpretations of children's learning, and then in the next meeting, use these interpretations to plan using our 2-weekly planner, which has a specific focus on planning for children's interests from home and school, particular learning intentions, and changes that will be made to the learning environment. We use the PYP planner as a macro lens and our 2-weekly planner as a micro lens. In the 2nd week of our collaborative planning time, teachers can use these meetings for different purposes, such as professional reading or environment setup and so on. We've also set aside Monday and Wednesday after school meetings where this allows us to have collaborative meetings with our specialist teachers, as well as using this time to meet as a whole school or as an early childhood division. We are by no means finished discussing how we document and analyse learning over time as a school, but what we do know is that we constantly need to be asking ourselves, why are we doing the things the way that we are? And if the answer does not come back to because it's best or will have the most impact on children's learning, then we really need to make sure that we revisit our purpose. Thank you.
Wow, Kate, that was great. And Kate and team, that's really an amazing research project I think you guys have done there, a really reflective action research project. How long did it take you to come to these changes?
Well, it genuinely has been a 4-year process, and I would say in particular the last 2 years is where we've sort of seen significant changes. And I think our goal is that we're actually going to be continuing to make changes for next school year, which we are currently looking at removing our written semester report. So we're just exploring what that will look like right now.
Okay, great. I'm going to unmute everyone so that anybody who'd like to ask a question from the group here can pose some questions to you, because I'm sure there are some wonderings.
Okay.
Well, first of all, congratulations on that. That was tremendous. And what an amazing amount of work you guys have done. So that was so lovely. So well done. Well done. That was awesome.
I do have a question. So moving away then, so traditionally we would call it a report card in North America, and the international schools I worked at as well, we call it a report card. So you're moving away, you're looking at moving away from that. Have I understood that correctly?
That's correct, yes.
Just because it's not as informative as the current way that you're looking at doing daily and weekly and interpretations of what's going on at that moment. Is that correct?
That's right. We felt like by the time the parents received the end of semester report, it really wasn't a correct and accurate representation of the child's learning. Because to start writing reports for a class of 19 to 20 children, that actually takes sort of weeks in advance. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to be more reflective of the learning that was happening in real time, whether that be daily, weekly, 3-weekly, monthly, and communicate that and educate our parents on how to read our posts instead of just leaving it to, as you can see at the start, our reports actually looked quite lengthy and are. Hopefully that it will become a more meaningful process in real time for our teachers, children, and our parents.
Well, yeah, and I would suspect it would create more agency with the students learning because it's more timely, of course, right?
That's right. That's the goal.
So have you found a difference in now how you might do conferencing? Because do you still do that because you're having this more immediate communication with your parent community?
Yes, really good question. We were just discussing that more today, actually. We feel that conferences are really important. So the idea of taking away a big written semester report, what we all recognise is that it's really important for parents and teachers to meet. So we would be actually increasing the amount of times in the school year where parents and teachers and children were actually meeting together.
Well, I'm wondering, too, if that could be more around celebration of learning. So at the end of a unit would be a natural time to celebrate all the, and have the children talk about all of their learnings during that unit, which would be, a quite timely yet helpful thing to move their agency forward, I would say.
That's right, yes. And I think what we're acknowledging that parents do actually want to know how their children are going and where to go. So we're not sort of in denial, and we're not going to be taking that away because that's important, but we're thinking the format of how that could be could be different, and it could be much more meaningful to both the parent, the teacher, and the child.
So I have one quick question because obviously your families are well connected, and we're in a rural situation where we actually still have some families that don't have a high-speed internet connection. So they actually wouldn't be able to take advantage of the platform, whether it be Seesaw or anything else. I mean, you're obviously not in that situation, but I'm just wondering, in a global sense, there would still be those of us actually that are, even we're in, in a well-developed part of the world, we still have dial-up in some of our homes, if you can believe it. So I'm wondering, that's a wonder I have. Like, how would we be able to incorporate those things in a way that would allow all of our parents access and thereby give you know, honor their sense of agency as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess we're lucky in our context that we can use the technology, and thankfully this does work here in China.
Yeah.
I guess though what we have been through many different platforms that haven't worked for us.
Yeah.
So we were originally a paper-based type of portfolio and paper report cards.
Yep.
And so even with some troubling systems here in China with technology, I think if we couldn't use the technology, I think we would still focus on using the element of portfolio and meeting with parents rather than writing a big report card at the end of the semester.
Yep. Nice.
Yeah.
Kate, it looks like you have changed the structure of your meetings to meet the new focus on analyzing and documenting learning over time. I'm wondering, has this impacted the content or the discussions of these meetings? Maybe you could unpack that a bit for us?
Yes. So we've always been quite lucky in our school. We've had ample time to have collaborative meeting time with our homeroom teachers, and we're looking for ways to have more with our specialist teachers. But I guess the change is what the purpose of the meetings were for. So the teachers in the past had a lot more autonomy over when and what and how. And then we decided that actually, if we were going to talk about children's learning and how they're developing over time, we really needed to schedule and make it a priority that we would do that. Otherwise, it was very easy to sit in meetings and talk about organising buses or field trips or things like that. So we felt like we're trying to strike a balance between sort of the must-haves, and that, if you can see on the screen right now, the week 1 being in that same week, we're talking about the interpretations that we've made, which will then feed into our planning. And then the next week, we're allowing ourselves time that maybe we need to do some more planning, maybe we need time just to set up the environment, maybe we need to talk about questions that the students have brought in that week. And I guess the idea is it's a plan and that things can change, but we've got this structure in place that puts sort of student learning at the centre and talking about what the children are doing.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Maybe you could add a little bit more about the role of the subject specialist teachers. Has it changed with this new focus, or has it remained the same? Have they always had a real strong voice in student learning and documenting learning?
The honest answer is not so much, and we're trying to move towards that. There really isn't any difference or isolation between a homeroom and a specialist teacher. So it's actually connected to a bigger picture of how we're scheduling our day. And the idea is we're looking for ways where homeroom teachers and specialist teachers can have more time in the day when they're both with the children in the same time in the same place, which we feel would then allow for deeper discussion about the children. Whereas currently we don't have that. So what is happening is that the homeroom teachers every 2 weeks are identifying children that they would like more information about. And so we have an observation schedule for our specialist teachers, and our homeroom teachers write the child's name and a focus, and the focus can be quite open even. And during those 2 weeks, our specialist teachers will be using the OneNote document currently to note down any interpretations. And then, as you can see on the after-school day planning times, roughly every 3 to 4 weeks, that's when our specialist and homeroom teachers can meet for a significant amount of time. So to be continued really with the use of our specialist teachers and how we document.
Yeah, it's great that you are, taking steps to really analyze this and reflect on what's working, and it's sort of a work in progress, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Like, I'm not joking when I said that today we were talking again for a long time about what does this all mean for us, and actually, like I said, it's got implications that are bigger than just looking at a report card. It really does actually feed into how are we scheduling our day with these children at such a young age, and we don't need to be putting so many constraints on who's going to which specialist and when. We need to be relaxing those ideas and allowing the children to make choices over that, and having our teachers, as a whole, they're teachers. Whether they're a music teacher or not, we're all teachers of everything. And how can we come together and plan what's best for our children?
Great. That's fantastic, Kate. I had a quick question for you about when you said that you sorted out the, I thought that was quite interesting. You said you looked at the comments that were on Seesaw and you kind of categorized them.
Yes.
Do you provide any training based on that for teachers about the type of comments that they're writing, or how they give reflective feedback?
Yes. Yeah, so this PD that we had, it was 2 years ago now, we really focused on how do you write an observation and how do you write an interpretation. So we've been working over a 2-year period to, I guess, tighten up our skills of how to actually write those comments. So I say the post that I just showed now is a reflection of teachers working on that skill for 2 years now. So it's quite tight the way that they're written, but it's been a process, and we've sort of tried to make sure that with our observations that they're very neutral and it's just very fact-based, and then the interpretation, that's when there's some sort of you know, an analysis or judgment, a reflection of what the learning is actually taking place. So it's taken time, and yes, the teachers did have training to do this.
Yeah, great. Okay, I think we'll stop there and just say a really big thanks and appreciation to you and your team for sharing that. I know that's going to be really useful for other schools that are just getting a window into your classroom. So thanks for that.
Thank you.